We're entering into the final week of a small group series that we've been studying called Fractured. And what we've been doing over the last several weeks or so is we've been taking a look at different areas or characteristics that can really break relationships. And we've been seeing what the Word of God has to say about it. Today I'd like to talk about forgiveness. And you know this, we know this, forgiveness can be incredibly difficult. Forgiveness in life for any number of hurts, it's hard. It's just really hard stuff. I think it's so hard that when we think about forgiveness and extending it to someone, we really do wonder if it's worth it. And we start to wonder if we can even start that journey. And it can seem so daunting. Or I've heard plenty of stories, and you maybe have too, where somebody starts on the path of forgiveness. They know it's the right thing to do. And as they get into it, things happen, and it's just too hard. They feel like they're just letting someone off the hook, and then they give up on that journey altogether. Now, throughout the series, we've stressed the topics that we've discussed. They truly are a danger to all relationships. You know, when you say relationships, sometimes we just naturally think of marriage or two people dating or engaged. And it's really, it's more broad than that. When we talk about forgiveness, that's certainly not just in marriage. It affects every relationship that we'll ever be in. And a lack of forgiveness is something that can manifest itself and really dominate every relationship. It's not just even a Christian problem. A lack of forgiveness, it's just a humanity problem. And the book of Romans tells us what we can expect when it comes to relationships. It says, "For everyone has sinned, we all fall short of God's glorious standard." And when we fall short in relationships, what happens is there are mistakes. When we fall short in relationships, a lot of times there's pain. And when we read something like this, "For everyone has sinned, we all fall short of God's glorious standard," we do understand very black and white that when you get two imperfect people together, whether that is in work and friendships and on teams and hobbies or in love, the result will at times be both parties needing to cross that threshold of forgiveness. I think it's safe to say that two imperfect people will never be able to hold a perfect relationship in any regard, because we've all sinned. Every day, you and I, imperfect people, fall short of God's glorious standard. And when we get hurt, right, sometimes we get offended, we get hurt, and what we want to do, sometimes if it's bad enough, is we want to forever write somebody out of our life. And I want to be clear for a moment that certainly I do believe there are times when we want and need to remove someone from our life because of the damage that they've done. And this video certainly isn't the platform to discuss certain examples or degrees of pain, but we are people, I think, of general common sense. So we understand that there are times when you and I may experience just such hurt that it just wouldn't be wise, it wouldn't be prudent, really to give somebody another chance at inflicting more pain on ourselves or on our family. But I also want to be clear that it is possible, it really is, to forgive someone for the life-altering ways in which they have hurt you without allowing them the chance to do it again. To be honest, I think sometimes we get this wrong in Christianity. We get this wrong in following Jesus. We think that forgiving someone means forgetting what they have done and opening ourselves or opening up our family to hurt again and again and again. We think that forgiveness means we're supposed to be railroaded. And that's just, I want you to know that's just not the case. And there are certainly times in life, there are certain scenarios and situations, there's moments where it is indeed healthy to forgive somebody, yet keep them at a distance. But I also want to be clear that it's never healthy to keep somebody at a distance and never forgive them. It's not healthy at all. And so though we do today in this video on this topic, we do acknowledge that there are significant life-changing ways that we have been hurt. There will be scars that we will forever carry while the offenses of our offender is actually far from their mind altogether. They've hurt us. They never even think about it the way that we think about it. I get it. That's sadly true. But we also need to acknowledge that most of our hurts aren't to that degree. There's a lot of things that you and I are hurt over. There's a lot of ways we've been hurt, and I want to be clear. I know it's meaningful and significant, but there's things that we hold on to really more than it holds on to us. And forgiveness is needed in some of our relationships for things that you and I truly can let go of if we're willing. And And today we want to talk about what that looks like. I've heard it said before that forgiveness is more about you than them. Forgiveness is more about me. Someone may have hurt me. And this idea of offering forgiveness, it feels like I'm letting them off the hook, but forgiveness is more about me and what's going on in my head and my heart than them. There's an author named Anne Lamott, and she's one of the sassiest authors I have ever read from. And she states in her book titled Little Victories, she says, "Not forgiving is like drinking rat poison and then waiting on the rat to die." I love that quote. When we are hurt or we are offended, we can do whatever we want with that moment. People of free will, when we are hurt or are offended, we can react however we want. And what I will admit, I will confess, what I've learned the hard way is that every day that I hold on to that anger and bitterness, right? When someone really hurts me, every time I think negatively about that person who has hurt me, when I replay their words, their actions over and over in my mind, it's like I'm being hurt for the very first time. It's more about me at that point than them. When I choose to neglect the path of forgiveness, when I don't even want to consider it for that individual because of what they've done to me, what I'm doing to myself is actually more harmful because my hurts will never heal when I'm allowing my mind to open them up over and over and over again. Now, if you take what the Bible has to say about forgiveness, and there's just a whole lot it talks about forgiveness and forgiving others, and you really boil it down to one statement. I think what we would see is that forgiveness allows us to walk in fellowship with God. The Bible has a ton to say about forgiveness, but you can really pull these words out of there and understand forgiveness. Right? It allows us to walk in fellowship with God. And there's a parable, a short story that Jesus told. We've titled it The Unforgiving Debtor. Which highlights how we as believers should pursue forgiving others. It highlights this statement right here that forgiveness allows us to walk in fellowship with God. And here's how that goes. Matthew 18:23-26, this is Jesus speaking. He says, "Therefore, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. In the process, one of his debtors was brought in who owed him millions of dollars. He couldn't pay. So his master ordered that he be sold along with his wife, his children, along with everything he owned to pay the debt. But the man fell down before his master and begged him, 'Please be patient with me, and I will pay it all.' And then his master was filled with pity for him, and he released him and forgave his debt." Now, if you put your faith in Christ, it's not really hard to see who we identify with most in this story. As sinners, you and I, we really are at the mercy of God. And through Christ, we have been released from our debts. We have been forgiven. We are the beneficiaries of grace. But then Jesus continues on. He says, "But when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few thousand dollars. He grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment. His fellow servant fell down before him and begged for a little more time. 'Be patient with me, and I will pay it,' he pleaded. But his creditor wouldn't wait. He had the man arrested and put in prison until the debt could be paid in full. When some of the other servants saw this, they were very upset. Right? So they went to the king who had just forgiven that man, and told him everything that had happened. And then the king called in the man who had been forgiven and said, 'You evil servant, I forgave you that tremendous debt,'" right? It said millions of dollars, what Jesus said, "because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you?" And then the angry king sent the man to prison to be tortured until he had paid his entire debt. "That's what my heavenly Father will do to you," Jesus says, "if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters from your heart." So not only does forgiveness, as we said, allow us to walk in fellowship with God, but also this parable shows us that forgiveness is essential for all those who have experienced the forgiveness of God. Forgiveness, you and I extending it, that is essential. Jesus makes it very clear in that parable for all those like you and I who have experienced the forgiveness of God. And if you think about it, if the God of the universe is willing to pardon our imperfections for the sake of our eternity, then how can you and I really give a life sentence to someone whose imperfections have hurt us? I mean, not only why would we want to do that to them, but why would we want to do that to ourselves? Why would we want to carry that hate and that anger and that bitterness over and over and over again? The book of Ephesians tells us to get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. Now, it doesn't mean that it'll be easy, forgiveness. I can almost promise you it will be hard. And if it's really hard, you know you're doing it right. So it's not going to be easy, but truly through the power of God, we as forgiven people can become forgiving people. It's not going to be easy, but forgiveness is so worth it. It's worth the journey. It's worth the hurt. It's worth the pain to be able to find that freedom in being able to forgive somebody. A few years ago, my wife and I, we went to Hawaii on our 10-year anniversary. We were really excited about it. I don't know if you've been to Hawaii or not, but when you think of going to Hawaii, like we did 10 years ago, we thought, oh, Hawaii. Oh man, the waves, right? The lays they'll put on us. Just, this hang loose mentality. That's what we thought of. But I'll tell you what we didn't think of. We didn't think about what a 5-hour time change is going to do to us. We didn't think about our circadian rhythm. We didn't think about our sleep schedule. You don't once, think about that. And that time change of 5 hours, it hit Julie and I really hard. We'd be waking up at 3 a.m. Ready to eat breakfast, and we'd be going to bed. We'd be eating lunch with the senior or dinner with the senior citizens at 3 p.m. We were going to bed before the sun set. It wasn't really the hang loose idea that I had in mind. But to take advantage of this, of just rising really early and going to bed really early too, we'd get up every morning, we would, about 3 o'clock, and we'd eat breakfast, and we'd head out to some sort of hiking trail that we had hit the first sign of sun. Kind of what we thought is exercise and go hiking, see some beautiful things early in the morning, as soon as the sun was coming up, and then just take the afternoon at a beautiful beach or a restaurant and just relax. And so one of the trails that we went to, it was actually called the Cocoa Head Trail. And it's really unique. You should look it up. I'll have some pictures here in a moment. But the Cocoa Head Trail was this old railway used during World War II that would carry supplies up the mountain to these pillbox bunkers that overlook the ocean. And so we get to this trailhead. We park. And the sun is just coming up, and we're kind of stretching, doing a couple things. There are other people by us, and they're dressed like they're going, and they got water packs like they're going to hike the Sahara Desert. It was the strangest thing, and I should have felt underprepared in that moment, but I actually felt confident. I'm like, well, they need all this stuff, and when we started on the trail, it actually it didn't look that bad. It was kind of a normal walking path, no signs of danger, but a few hundred yards away, reality was staring us in the face. Little colorful dots are people all the way up there. And so we stopped, Julie and I did, and we considered the journey, right? And there were plenty of people all around us who they looked up at that mountain, and they saw what it would take to get to the top. And a lot of them said, no thanks. Smart people. They walked back to their cars, and there are other people who, a couple hundred yards into this, it started to seem so daunting. It was exhausting. Some of them, thinking, why did you want to do this to yourself? And so that they would assume that wasn't worth the effort. Whatever the result would be, they didn't know, but they assumed it wouldn't be worth the effort, and so they turned around, they quit. But nevertheless, the Holtums aren't quitters, right? We wanted to try, and so about a third of the way up, Julie and I didn't say anything to each other, but our facial expressions and our overall body language and demeanor was screaming a lot of things. And we both we didn't want to say we want to give up, but we both looked at each other, and you could just tell that we didn't know if this was going to be worth the trip anymore. Why would we do this to ourselves? On such an occasion, a 10-year anniversary, it seems silly. Well, actually, and kind of unintentionally, my wife's shirt actually kind of summed up the whole experience. People really appreciate this. You may not be able to see it, but it says, "Everything hurts and I'm dying." I don't know if that was a testimony to our marriage or to that journey up the side of the mountain, but it did. Everything hurt, right? We felt like we were dying. Our legs were burning. We kept going, though. Our legs were burning. We were tired. And when your legs start burning, you get tired. You start misstepping a little bit. And when it started to get a little nervous because the further we was heading up, there were these big gaps between the pieces of wood there. And if you slipped, it was about, at times like this, like 8 to 12 feet to the ground. And then you're sliding down a mountain. In fact, somebody, as we were navigating a section that was kind of broken off right here, we were navigating it. And I said, my goodness. And somebody said, they don't call it the stairs of doom for nothing. No idea it had that nickname. It had been a hard no for Julie and I if we'd have heard that's what we were hiking. But we pressed on. And my goodness, we at one point, we sat down and we wondered if it was going to be worth it. Because it is 1.5 miles straight up, 1,048 stairs. But my goodness, was it worth it? Once we got to the top, the view was absolutely outstanding. It was beautiful. In fact, it's one of the most beautiful things we had ever seen. We stayed there and looked really as far as our eyes could see at that beauty. We stayed there just as long as we could. It was one of the hardest things that we've ever done, but my goodness, such a beautiful, beautiful blessing. And forgiveness is a lot like that. Once you wholeheartedly extend it, you know forgiveness is not a weakness. As you're going through it, you know forgiveness as you extend it to people, whether they deserve it or not. Forgiveness is truly just an incredible, incredible feat of strength. Make no doubt about it, forgiveness can be daunting and a difficult journey. There are so many moments on that path of forgiveness where you'll wonder if it's worth it. You want to give up. You'll come across other people who say it's not going to be worth it. They'll tell you to turn back. A person doesn't deserve your forgiveness. A lot of examples of bitterness and anger that they've harbored, resentment they've carried for many years. But when you truly pursue forgiveness, it's so beautiful. When you truly pursue forgiveness, you come to see that that's such beauty. It's such a freeing thing. And it's not only beautiful for you and the freedom you'll experience. It's beautiful for people who will see the grace of God working through you.